All right, welcome back. This is Compass Podcasts. And for all of you who caught the last podcast that I did, I'm really glad that I was able to actually kick off my YouTube channel that I've been talking about doing for a little while now. So I'm glad that that kind of worked out. I am going to try a few different things. I got a better editing program, so hopefully I'll get that up a little quicker, maybe be able to do a little extra stuff with it. But yeah, I will be uploading to YouTube again since that seemed to work out just great. And I saw that I actually got a lot of people to look at that video on YouTube, so I'm really glad that that worked out, and I hope that if I really do keep up on it, it'll keep more people coming back. So I'm kind of looking forward to this and kicking it off. Now I'm going to have a little bit more to do since I'll be kicking it off on two platforms, that being uploading the audio through Anchor and also uploading the video that I'm doing here on YouTube now. So there might be some space between when those different uploads will happen, but I will get them up, and I'll be posting those links as soon as I get them up immediately on Twitter as well. So if you do follow me on Twitter, you can just go on there and follow the link from there. But anyway, I hope that my last podcast was a step up from what I've been doing, trying to work on doing better topics, more engaging topics, I guess, something that I can explore from a little different angle, kind of what I discussed last time. And with today's topic, it's something that I was kind of thinking about last week a little bit. And I thought it would be something really good to kind of explore and talk about. And today's topic for episode 18 of Compass Podcasts, I really want to approach the topic of love, but not necessarily romantic love, more love between a parent and a child, specifically that parent and child being my relationship with my parents, how that kind of affected me now, and as a result of the parenting that I received and the disciplinary actions that my parents took on myself and my siblings when growing up, and how seeing disciplinary actions they might have used on other siblings of mine in our household might have affected me personally. So really today's topic is more focused on love. Did I love my parents? Did I actually love my parents, or did I love them out of habitual obedience based on their abuse, which was disguised as discipline? Now, as I said before, this was a question that I was really asking myself earlier. It was in the middle of a work day. Sometimes my brain is just going wild. I work by myself most of the time, so that kind of means that I'm actually left alone with my thoughts a lot of the time too. So I have a lot of time throughout 8 or 10 hour day to just think about a bunch of random things, whether that's story, my podcast, or life in general. So this last week, apparently it happened to be life in general, and I was kind of thinking of, did I actually love my parents? Because really what sparked the thought in the first place was, I was thinking back to when events of the trial were going on, when a few of my siblings and I were called up to the witness stand, and we had to testify against our parents. And I'm not speaking for anyone else here. I'm just trying to speak for myself. I felt this strong sense of loyalty or devotion, as it were, to my parents, to support them and do what I assumed to be the right thing, because they believed themselves to be innocent. And so I felt this inherent need to support them in that, because they were my parents and I had to stand by them. And one thought that kind of got me thinking about this whole did I actually love them thing was, some people have asked, how did you think that they were innocent, or how could you support them knowing everything they did? And a lot of the time, I just kind of brushed that aside by saying, well, I supported them because as a kid, you don't want to think your parents are anything but perfect, especially when you're younger. Unless, of course, there's something really serious going on, which, there was, I'm not denying that, but I brushed questions aside, such as, why did I stick by them, just by saying, oh, well, I was a kid and I didn't know better, and I wanted to believe my parents were good people, because that's how I was raised. But really, I started really thinking about that, And, did I only support them because of what I was trained to do? Growing up, I was trained or more accurately, even conditioned by my parents from a very young age to I was going to say support them, but I don't think support is really the right word. I think I was conditioned to be 100% obedient towards them and their requests in every aspect of my daily life. There was no gray area in me to decide if I wanted to listen to them or follow them or do as I was told. If they commanded it, then I followed, because they did such a good job at conditioning me, and they called it disciplining me to do the right thing. Now, according to my parents, they based a lot of their ideas off of, well, for one, they took the Bible extremely literal, and they based also a lot of their disciplinary actions that they started off as disciplinary actions based off of a book from the teachings of one Michael and Debbie Pearl, which, if you are at all familiar or have been surrounded with anyone inside of the homeschool community, I'm sure you probably have heard of them, at the very least in one form or another. So they have been popular. I know my mother was very into a lot of their teachings and their works, as was my father, and they read this book. The specific name of the book is, I believe it's it's either How to Train Up a Child or To Train Up a Child, based off the book or based off the Bible verse, train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old he will not depart from it. Now, I only know that verse by heart because that was kind of beat into me at a young age as well, that my parents were training me because it was the right thing and they wanted me to follow the right path. And so, the question of did I love my parents really, would explain, at least for me, why I stuck by them and continued, and why also would help to explain the inner conflict that I felt while supporting them as best I could around the trial and around stuff, and telling people they were innocent, they weren't guilty, they didn't do this, blah, 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 and so on and so forth and so forth, just repeating verbatim everything that they were in turn telling me, because that's what I was trained to do by them. I was trained to support them at every turn, for a lack of a better term. Now, how can love be described? A lot of people debate on how love can really be described as just, a term by itself, because a lot of say, you have actions and words and all that compiled into one. So it's really hard to describe love accurately with one or two words. But based on just a brief exploration into terms from Merriam-Webster Dictionary primarily, love can be described as dedication, affection, admiration, benevolence, devotion, which I already stated, enthusiasm, unselfish loyalty, to appreciate, and to cherish. Now, I think when we're looking at a love as I saw demonstrated to me by my parents, it was more, or how I thought it would be, how I loved my parents, was more devotion and unselfish loyalty, kind of. I would go so far as to say that it was, you can totally remove the unselfish part and just throw in loyalty into the mix, because really I was devoted and I was loyal. When I say loyal, I mean loyal to a T. Like when we were pulled out of the home, the first thing we would do is try to break the no contact rule. Contact parents. Boom. Loyalty. We would do insane stuff, like I remember trying to swap letters back and forth in the bathroom behind CPS's back. which obviously was a big no-no. Now, why were we doing it? Because we were encouraged to by our parents. And why did we do that? Because we told ourselves repeatedly and over and over and over again that we loved our parents, and we had this ingrained sense of loyalty that we had to support. Now, as far as, you could even throw dedication in there in the mix. That kind of mixes right in there with loyalty as well. But as far as these other terms that I've stated, such as affection, admiration, enthusiasm, appreciation, and to cherish, I would say you could throw almost all of those out the window. You could probably keep an admiration, because really what child doesn't, support or share at least a little bit of admiration for their parents in some way or another, looking up to them at some point in their life, which I did. For a while, I told myself that I looked up to my dad, that he was a good man. And of course, as I would tell myself that, I would just overlook the slew of other red flags that were flaring up in my face all the time, because obviously he wasn't guilty of those, right? And neither was my mom. And really this love that I had, as I was just saying, we tried to break the no contact rule. We tried to swap letters in the bathroom. We it even went farther than that. I could go into a lot more depth with the amount of loyalty that we followed them on. There was stuff like after that night, I remember getting in the living room, or it wasn't that night, sorry, it was the following morning. We all get in the living room and we sit down, and first words out of my dad's mouth was, "All right, guys, we're going to get through this as a family," creating that sense of loyalty, family bond. And then, of course, I think there was some sort of expression of love thrown in there in the mix, like, "I love you guys, blah, 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 blah," so on and so forth. And then it went a step further, and it was, okay, we're not going to tell, or if CPS asks A, we're going to tell them B and leave out A. I follow them on that was because I had the sense of habitual obedience. They had disciplined me for so long, beat me when I didn't obey, made me go out and do chores when I didn't obey, when I didn't do as I was told. So when they sit me down with my other brothers and sisters and tell me, "You're going to do this, you're going to do this, and you're going to do this," then obviously I would do that. And it even went on and on and on until the point, we commenced to the trial, which is what I was thinking about that really kickstart the whole idea behind this podcast in the first place. We get up to the stand, and I don't want to say something that's going to, I don't want the jurors to take this the wrong way. I don't want the judge to take this the wrong way. I can't have the prosecutors blow things out of proportion, so I need to do my best to say something the right way, or just not say something at all, which half the time I ended up not saying anything at all, just, spouting off plead the fifth, until pretty much I was just stumbling over my own words, and just to avoid saying something that I knew my parents wouldn't approve of. And really that carried on to even after the trial got done and my parents got their sentences and they ended up in prison. I still, I remember having conversations with my aunt and uncle and telling them, I feel this sense of loyalty to them, and I interpret it as a sense of I still love them. I had this love for them despite what they did, right? And what did I do? I would still drive myself down. I'm talking like an hour and a half to almost 2 hours out of the way to go see my dad every now and then on a Saturday. And I would drive down, spend all my gas money, go down there to visit with him, and we would chat, we would do stuff like read our Bible. Now, did I enjoy seeing him? Yes, to an extent. I told myself that I enjoyed visiting with him, but I was doing it out of a sense of loyalty. My dad would call me at this time quite often. I don't accept any calls from him anymore because of the profound negative effect that it was having on my life and how I was projecting that negativity onto other people in my life, such as my wife. And the only reason I was going down to see him was because my dad would call me up and go, "Hey, Joe, I miss you. You know, you need to go." Let me see. He would have me do stuff for him, like go check on grandparents. Go pick this up for me. Oh, when you come down to visit me, bring $20 so you can buy me food out of the vending machine. Now, of course, I didn't need food, but I was encouraged to, and I did it because that's what my dad told me to do. Now, why did I let this carry on into my adult life? You think that this would have petered out after I was pulled out of the home and removed away from my parents, you know, creating that distance or separation of them having this ability to emotionally and physically abuse me. Well, just because there was that barrier in place that created them, the barrier in place prevented them from physically abusing me, that emotional abuse lasted a lot longer. And unfortunately, I was not aware of it like I am now and can really reason it out in my head. I went down to see him. I took calls from both my dad and my mom because I thought I loved them and I wanted to stay in contact with them. And I almost started putting money online so that way I could have video calls with my dad. Now, just thinking of how going down and visiting him in person impacted me, I'm glad that I ultimately decided against doing that. And so really, when it comes down to it, it's hard to really argue that I actually did love my parents and that it wasn't just habitual obedience as a result of the abuse that I received from them. I would argue that they still believe they share a sense of love for me and that I share a love for them as well, because they believe that that bond is always going to be there, that I am always going to care for them in a certain way, as, you know, a child will always have a soft spot in their heart for their parents, I guess. And at this point, I still, for lack of a better term, I still refer to them as mother and father, or dad and mom, but I don't view them, I no longer view them in a parental light. In fact, I don't really think I actually view anyone in my life specifically in a parental light. And part of that may be because I have had this sense of loyalty to my birth parents for so long that it's hard for me to move past that. That could be. But really, I believe that the abuse is far more extensive growing up than what my siblings and I have thought it to be. And I believe that that's what has affected how we handled things when we were pulled out of the home, how we handled things during the trial. And also, you know, as I said, it profoundly affected me as I moved on to my young adult life. And I believe that that is not love at all, that was simply as a result of their abuse and continued to push my sense of loyalty and supported my habitual obedience in regards towards them. Now, I hope that I wasn't stumbling over my words too much. This was, you know I don't have a lot of articles to support a lot of this. It wasn't that type of podcast. I do hope that this was a little bit informative. I do want to do more podcasts where I can support them with kind of like what I did with the one on my racial illiteracy, where I could support it with articles. But I was just reminiscing over this last week, and I really wanted to make a podcast about it and just kind of talk things through for myself. And I hope it was a good one. You know, sometimes when I'm trying to work thoughts out of my head, I tend to stumble over my words a little bit. But anyway, thank you for taking the time to listen to this podcast, and I will see you next week.